I'm Rich Andreski, Bureau Chief for Public Transportation at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. And I'd like to welcome you to Along the Lines, a podcast series where we'll explore current issues and ideas on Connecticut's public transportation system. Welcome to another episode of Along the Lines. I'm your host, Rich Andreski. In just the last 10 years, new technology in transportation has led to a revolution in how people travel. In today's world, new mobility now includes autonomous vehicles, on-demand transit, and a variety of shared mobility options. While self-driving cars are still a ways off, there are exciting new options available to Connecticut residents that weren't around even a few years ago. So the question is, what is the future of mobility in our state? And what role will technology play in helping us get around? Joining me today to help answer those questions are Dave Harvey, founder and chief operating officer of Link City, and Joe Comerford, executive director for Ninetown Transit. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. So Dave, let's start with you. Link City, what a great name. Can you talk a little bit about your organization, your mission, and what's going on with scooter share?
Yeah, absolutely. So Link City, we started in 2019. We're based out of Bethel, Connecticut. We are a last mile micromobility company. We offer electric means of transportation by way of e-scooter or e-bike. We started our company because we wanted to bring a new high-tech mode of transportation to customers. And we also have a wildlife foundation mission part of our company as well. In the cities that we operate in, we give back a portion of our revenue to local wildlife rehabilitators. So we're trying to do a little bit better by electric means of transportation for the world and also help our wildlife. So since 2019, we've expanded to a couple different markets, including Bridgeport, Connecticut. We started in New Milford, Connecticut, a very small market, and we also launched in Orlando, Florida, a month before the pandemic hit. Since then, we've had to, reevaluate our footprint, and we scaled back. And currently in 2021, we are just operating in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and Bridgeport University.
Exciting times, and certainly a service that lots of communities are looking for nowadays. Would you consider your service basically a last mile solution, or are there other roles for scooters in communities?
We do have our customers that use scooters for the last mile transportation. We have customers that have monthly memberships and just use e-scooters for their way of travel within Bridgeport every single month. We also have a lot of customers that use our e-scooters for leisure and fun. They are a blast to hop on and ride around your city. I always tell everybody, get on a scooter, you'll feel like a kid again, and you'll explore where you live. It's a fun time hopping on an e-scooter and traveling.
Well, Dave, thanks for joining us. I'm looking forward to learning more about your program. Joe Comerford, you've also joined us this morning, and we're talking about micromobility, which, just for our listeners, it's the concept of the old days of public transportation was you had to wait for transit to come to you at a bus stop or a train station. Micromobility is a different solution to the age-old problem of getting from A to B. So, Joe, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on at Ninetown Transit?
Sure. So back in 2015, after about 6 years of significant ridership growth and doubling our ridership in that period, we started to see a decline in ridership for the first time, which mirrored a national trend that was going on. And so we started looking hard at, are we still meeting the needs of our community? And what we really determined was that people's demand for travel had changed. And no longer did people want to just wait on a fixed route schedule. They expected to be able to pick up when they want to be picked up. And so around early 2018, a software vendor approached us about this idea of microtransit, which was very new at the time. And it seemed like it could potentially be a good solution for us, in a few different ways. And so at that time, we approached the Connecticut Department of Transportation with the idea, and we were met with enthusiasm on their part. And so we began the process of determining how we would implement such a solution.
Yeah. So, Joe, you're calling it the extra mile. Maybe you could describe for our listeners, exactly how that works and how your customers are using the service.
Yeah. So Extra Mile is an on-demand microtransit service. And what microtransit is, to sum it up, it's a tech-enabled shared transportation that's really a blend of your traditional fixed-route transit, demand response, and even like ride-hailing services. So its routes and schedules are constantly changing and shifting based on rider demand. And it typically uses smaller vehicles like vans or small buses. And customers either can use a smartphone app or they can also call in to book a trip when they need it. So, very different from that more traditional demand response model where you have to call at least a day in advance. It's right there on demand. And trips, they'll have to start and end within a designated zone that we've created. And then that trip is immediately scheduled through the software and dispatched to a vehicle. And there's several different uses for microtransit that we explored. And one's a route replacement. So you can sometimes replace either unproductive routes or maybe certain times of the day, like evening routes where you don't have as high ridership. There's first mile, last mile connectors. You could use as a replacement for traditional demand response. And also you could use it as a fixed route feeder type service. So you kind of use it to feed into a mainline route. And so people always ask us kind of what's the difference between microtransit and other kind of ride sharing platforms. And for one, as I said earlier, you have a designated zone, so your trips have to occur within a smaller area. So for us, that area is about 50 square miles, versus our overall dollar ride area, for instance, is 330 square miles. So it's a much smaller service area. All the vehicles that we use are accessible. We have that call-in scheduling option, which is very different from other from ride-sharing platforms, and it's also shared ride. So you're not necessarily going to get picked up and going straight where you're going. We do aggregate trips and group them together.
So, Joe, you and Dave both started these really great new services just ahead of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what effect that has had on ridership. Have you seen any changes in the types of trips people are taking, time of day of week? So if you could go first, I'd like to hear from Dave as well.
Yeah, so we launched in May of 2019. So we weren't even a year in before the pandemic hit. And we definitely saw a decline immediately in March and April, kind of when everything was shut down. But what was interesting was while we saw a decline, we did not see a decline anywhere near what we were seeing on our fixed route and demand response services. So where they were down 80%, our extra mile only dropped about 40%, and it also rebounded a lot quicker. We were back by October. We were back seeing month-to-month increases. And fast forward to today, we are now hitting our highest numbers yet. So it's come back a lot quicker than our other services have come back. And in terms of how it's where people are riding and who's using it, that has changed as well. We designed it really as a first mile, last mile connector around the train station, the Shoreline East and Amtrak stations in our region. When we first did a study, we found that 46% of people were also using Shoreline East. Today, that's a much smaller number. We're seeing significantly fewer trips. I mean, it's a very small number of trips now going to the train station. We're seeing more people are using it to get to other places, more like shopping and work.
And is your fee system, a fixed price for regardless of distance, or is there a distance component to it?
So we launched it as a free pilot. We were working on implementing a fare, deciding what a fare would be, being a new type of service, right before the pandemic hit, and the entire state bus system went fare free. And so we just now are getting back to revisiting a fare, which we are going to be holding hearings in the next month. And what we've proposed at this point is a flat fee. That this current software vendor we use is only capable of doing that. And what we're looking to do is put it in line with our fixed route service and accept all the same fare media, because we do get transfers between the services. So we want to make sure that it's as easy as possible to move from one of our services to another.
So, same question to you, Dave. What effect is COVID having on your business and the ridership patterns that you're seeing?
Yeah, so when COVID hit nationally, we saw that people were shifting their ways of transportation away from using the bus or a ride share like an Uber or Lyft, and they were looking at e-scooter transportation and electric bike transportation a lot more than they were before. But throughout the pandemic, in different market, we saw different responses. When we were operating in Orlando, we saw a big decline in ridership because we were in a vacation city. And then in Bridgeport, we saw a big uptick in ridership because a lot of people were enjoying the new transportation method. So, our company saw mixed results in different markets, which is very interesting. But all in all, we definitely saw that, people enjoy e-scooter transportation, and they felt a lot safer from, possibly getting COVID than, their more traditional transportation methods.
Dave, your new company, not so new anymore, but your company is on the forefront of what's really happening in our urban centers. Planners and developers are rethinking how our cities are built, and you're really offering a solution that meets the needs of a lot of folks that don't either want to or don't have the financial means to afford a car. And a car is an expensive proposition. Plus, you've got to find a place to park it in a city. So really exciting. I'm curious, as you look out beyond, COVID and beyond the immediate few years ahead of us, how do you see your business evolving and growing with cities?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to stop at e-scooters or e-bikes. I think that, this whole thing is going to continue to evolve. People want to ditch gas-powered cars. It's not great for our Earth, and they're looking to have more environmentally friendly and more cost-effective solutions. We've seen what the pandemic did for vehicle purchases. Not everyone can go out and buy a $30,000 to $50,000 vehicle, but $99 a month to have your own personal scooter to ride around wherever you want within your urban city is a lot more affordable. And people are showing that they like that. And I've never seen a person frowning on an e-scooter before. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had an opportunity in Columbus and Cincinnati a few summers ago to ride their scooters. And I have to agree, it is exhilarating to be out there. And with, increasing availability of bike lanes and other pedestrian amenities, it's increasingly safe to ride a scooter in cities. So it wasn't that long ago where Uber and Lyft didn't exist. And you really had only a few options. You had your own personal vehicle, you had public transportation, which was a scheduled service, and you had taxi. And taxi was not always available. And when it was typically available from only a few hubs. Otherwise, you had to call ahead. And so this is really a very what we call in the industry disruption. Disruption is happening at many levels in transportation right now. So I'm wondering too, Joe, you're seeing probably you're first in the state here to experiment with a transition from a traditional fixed route service to this new micromobility solution. I'm wondering what you think the outlook looks like for public transportation. It's a question that weighs on my mind quite frequently. You and I have not talked about it, but so for our listeners, where do you see public transportation going in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a big question. Yeah, I think it's, as you said, it's probably the most disruptive time I've seen in my 20 years in this industry. It's also exciting. I think that we're going to see more microtransit, but I don't think I don't think it could ever totally replace fixed route because there's still certainly a need in certain locations and certain densities to continue fixed route service. It just makes sense in certain areas, in certain core corridors. But it seems to be a great way to serve some of the more outlying areas and smaller areas. The other place that doesn't work well is longer distances. So many of our fixed routes are more regional services, and they connect, to hubs like to New London, to Middletown. So those are difficult to do in a microtransit method because of the amount of vehicles you would need to keep your wait times down. So I think it fills a new space and it replaces some of what we did before, but certainly not everything. I think it's going to be a new tool in the mix of transportation options that we can provide to our communities.
No doubt. I think what you're doing with Extra Mile and Dave, what you're doing with Scooter Share is very complementary to fixed route transit. And frankly, where fixed route transit struggled was if you were someone that didn't live along a route, you might have had a very long walk and even potentially a long drive to the fixed route service. So what you're doing now is really opening up public transportation and putting it in reach of more people.
And I think both of these methods really are great around rail stations, because the first mile, last mile issues are far bigger on rail than they are on even fixed route bus, particularly out in the suburbs where we're running this pilot.
Dave, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, we see a lot of customers, pick up an e-scooter from the train station. So they are using that from one transportation method to another.
We have a lot of listeners on this program that come from, they're elected officials, policymakers. I mentioned developers and planners on the program. And I'm wondering if you're speaking to our audience right now and they're contemplating these kinds of services, what lessons learned might you offer them? And what should they be thinking about if they want to establish a micromobility service?
Well, I think that is a very long list of conversation. I think the best way to go about it is if you're interested in learning more about what Link City can do for your city municipality, give us a call. It's 888-HEY-LINKS, or just visit us on our website, links.city, and fill out the contact form, and we'll get back to you. We'd love to sit down, do a presentation for you, and talk about all the different benefits that e-scooter or e-bike transportation can do for your city.
Hey, Dave, if you could give that web address again and spell it for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. It's links.city, LYNX.CITY. So the .city replaces the .com.
Beautiful. I love it. And Joe, any lessons learned for our listeners?
Yeah, I think that it's really kind of tempting to just kind of go out there and throw out these on-demand zones, but I think that the way that we did it worked really well for us. We had a few different ideas of what might work, but we partnered with a software vendor that was able to provide a simulation beforehand. So we simulated our different ideas and settled on the one that that showed it was the going to provide the best results. That really helped us eliminate the other options, really. And we knew going in exactly how many vehicles we would need to meet the demand and what to expect for demand. And it has proven to be, it's taken a little time to get there, but it has proven to be pretty accurate. So I certainly recommend going through that type of activity to get some sense of if it will work in the way you think it will work, because that's been very successful for us.
It is remarkable to see what both of you are doing and to think about the pace of change. And I grew up with the Seinfeld series, and they're back on Netflix, and it's interesting to watch the storylines and how the storylines in each episode are so outdated nowadays. The notion of how to meet up with somebody years ago, the unavailability of cell phone service. These weren't things in the 1990s, right? And yet the way we live has changed so dramatically in a few decades. And it's fun to think about, how different life and mobility will be in the future. We're living it now. We're experimenting. There's no doubt that it's going to be very different 5 and 10 years out. And I think it's for the better in the long run. I mean, the idea that getting around should be easier. It should be. It shouldn't be a luxury to be able to go when you want to go and have to own a car. That shouldn't be available only to certain people. And so I'm excited about this. What would you like to leave our listeners, maybe as a wrap up thought? What would you like to leave our listeners with in terms of your aspirations for the future? The possibilities going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope to continue to spread our footprint throughout Connecticut. Again, we'd love to talk to more cities and municipalities. But for the people who haven't tried to ride an e-scooter or an e-bike, I definitely suggest getting with a friend or family member who has, and hop on one and give it a try, even if it's not for your needs of getting from A to B. Just hopping on one and riding around town, you're going to feel like a kid again, and it's a lot of fun. If you visit our website, you'll actually see our CEO's parents riding the e-scooters and e-bikes on the short videos we have on our website, which is pretty exciting. So people of all ages, 18 and plus, can ride these devices. So give it a shot, and you'll be happy you did.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. And I see you have the those e-bikes too. I'm on your website now. Very sharp. So, Joe, thoughts about aspirations and where we go from here?
Yeah, well, we are hoping to be able to offer some additional microtransit zones. We have at least two more that came out of the bus study that we did about a year ago. One would be in Middletown, around Wesleyan, connecting Wesleyan University to downtown. I think we know that there's a critical need there to have better connections to downtown Middletown from the university. And then there's some others planned for other parts of our district. So we think there's opportunities to duplicate this in other places around our district and further enhance people's mobility options throughout our service area. And I do think, potentially, there's certainly potential in the future that it could, to some extent, replace some of the traditional demand response and ADA paratransit service that we do today, in a way that gives people a little more freedom, and not have to book that day in advance. We hear that a lot already. People really like that feature of it over our more traditional services. So I think there's tremendous opportunity, especially as the technology just improves.
And Joe, you and Ninetown Transit are partners with the DOT, so let's together keep an eye on those discretionary grant programs coming out through the federal government. Definitely want to continue to partner with you on these initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, gentlemen, thank you for making the time to join me today to talk about this exciting topic. I always love, anyone that knows me knows that I love to talk about the future. It's exciting. You two are leading the way in terms of rethinking how people get around, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you for being with us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
And thanks once more to our guests, Dave Harvey, COO for Link City, and Joe Comerford, Executive Director for Ninetown Transit. And with that, I'm Rich Andreski, and this is another episode of Along the Lines. So, Joe, you're Executive Director for Ninetown Transit, which is a public transportation system in Connecticut. Can you talk a little bit about your organization, your services, and what you're all about?
Yeah, so we are the public transit operator for the lower Connecticut River Valley, which is the area around Old Saybrook, Connecticut. It's about 330 square mile service area. And we operate a few different services. We do traditional fixed route services. We do on demand response service for the general public in our more rural areas. We do ADA paired transit service along our fixed routes. We also offer DBA fixed route service, and we do a taxi voucher program in addition to our new services.
And really filling a key need for folks in the lower Connecticut River Valley there in terms of transit. And I should, for our listeners, add that in Connecticut, we have a very rich network of public transportation services. Some are operated under the CT Transit branding. Those are contracted by the state. And then we work with a local or regional partners like Ninetown Transit to provide additional services in other areas of the state. So together, we have a pretty rich network of public transportation services. And so thank you, Joe. I really appreciate that explanation. Remember, you can find previous episodes of Along the Lines on your favorite podcast platform, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud. I'm Rich Andreski. Join us next time for another episode of Along the Lines. Thanks for listening to this episode of Along the Lines. This is your host, Rich Andreski. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to subscribe and share.